Marcus Thompson had been a royal guard for 15 years. He walked the same corridors every day, watched the same people, and kept the same secrets. But nothing had prepared him for what he discovered on that cold Tuesday morning in November. The royal family was preparing for their annual charity gala. Queen Camilla was in her private study, going through guest lists with her secretary. Marcus stood outside her door, as he always did, listening to the gentle murmur of conversation inside. Everything seemed normal until he heard something that made his blood run cold. A phone call came through to the Queen's private line. Marcus wasn't supposed to listen, but the conversation was loud enough that he couldn't help but hear parts of it. The caller was Dr. Helena Richardson, a geneticist from Cambridge University. She was talking about DNA test results that had been requested months ago. "Your Majesty," Dr. Richardson's voice carried through the door. "I need to discuss these results with you privately. What we've discovered could change everything we know about the royal lineage." Queen Camilla's voice became sharp and worried. "What exactly are you saying, Doctor?" "The samples you provided show some unexpected genetic markers. The royal bloodline. It's not what the public believes it to be. There are significant discrepancies that go back generations." Marcus felt his heart pounding. He had always been loyal to the crown, but this conversation was making him question everything. He knew he should walk away, but his feet seemed glued to the floor. The doctor continued. "The DNA analysis shows that several members of the current royal family don't share the genetic markers that should be present in the official bloodline. This suggests that somewhere in the past there was a break in the true royal succession." Queen Camilla was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was barely above a whisper. "How many people know about this?" "Just myself and 2 lab technicians. We've sworn them to secrecy, but Your Majesty, this information is explosive. If it ever became public..." "It cannot become public," the Queen said firmly. "This would destroy the monarchy. Thousands of years of history would be questioned. The people's faith in the crown would be shattered." Marcus realized he was holding his breath. He had stumbled upon the biggest secret in British history. The royal family, the very foundation of the monarchy, was built on a lie that had been hidden for generations. Dr. Richardson's voice became more urgent. "There's more, Your Majesty. The tests also show that Prince William and Prince Harry have different genetic markers than what would be expected from their supposed father, King Charles. The implications are staggering." The room fell silent. Marcus could almost feel Queen Camilla's shock through the thick wooden door. This wasn't just about ancient history anymore. This was about the current generation of royals. "What are you suggesting?" Queen Camilla asked, her voice trembling slightly. "I'm not suggesting anything, Your Majesty. I'm simply reporting the scientific facts. The DNA doesn't lie. Either there were affairs that produced heirs, or there were adopted children who were passed off as biological heirs, or there were other deceptions that have been carefully hidden." Marcus knew he should leave immediately. This was information that could get him killed, or at least locked away forever. But he couldn't move. The weight of what he was hearing was too enormous. Queen Camilla's voice became cold and calculating. "Dr. Richardson, I need you to destroy all evidence of these tests. Every sample, every report, every computer file. Everything must disappear. Your Majesty, I can't do that. This is scientific evidence. It's part of history now. It's part of history that no one can ever know about," the Queen replied sharply. "I'm not asking you, Doctor. I'm telling you. This information ends here. Today." The conversation continued for another 20 minutes, with the Queen becoming more desperate and the doctor becoming more resistant. Marcus heard offers of money, threats of legal action, and finally veiled threats about the doctor's safety and career. During this time, Marcus's mind was racing. He had always believed in the monarchy, had dedicated his life to protecting it. But now he realized he had been protecting a lie. The royal family he served wasn't royal at all, at least not in the way the world believed. He thought about all the ceremonies he had watched, all the traditions he had helped maintain, all the respect and reverence shown to people who apparently had no more right to the throne than any ordinary citizen. The whole system was a fraud. As the phone call finally ended, Marcus heard Queen Camilla calling for her secretary. "Cancel all my appointments for today," she said, her voice shaky. "I need to think about this situation very carefully." Marcus quickly moved away from the door and took up his position further down the hallway. His mind was spinning with questions. What should he do with this information? Could he pretend he never heard it? Should he tell someone? But who could he tell? And who would believe him? The door to the Queen's study opened and her secretary emerged, looking confused and worried. She walked past Marcus without making eye contact, which was unusual. Normally, she would nod politely to the guards. A few minutes later, Queen Camilla herself appeared in the doorway. Marcus had seen her upset before, but never like this. Her face was pale, her hands were shaking slightly, and her usual composed demeanor was completely gone. She looked like a woman who had just learned that her entire world was about to collapse. She looked directly at Marcus, and for a moment he wondered if she somehow knew that he had overheard the conversation. Her eyes seemed to be studying his face, searching for any sign that he was hiding something. "Marcus," she said quietly, "how long have you been standing here?"
"Just arrived, Your Majesty," he lied smoothly.
"Is there anything you need?" She continued to stare at him for what felt like an eternity. Then, without another word, she turned and went back into her study, closing the door firmly behind her. Marcus remained at his post, but everything had changed. He was no longer just a royal guard protecting the monarchy. He was now the keeper of a secret that could bring down the entire British royal system. The question was, what was he going to do about it? 3 days passed since Marcus overheard the devastating phone call. He barely slept, barely ate, and could hardly focus on his duties. The secret was eating him alive from the inside. Every time he looked at Queen Camilla, he saw not a monarch, but a woman desperately trying to protect a centuries-old lie. On Friday morning, Marcus was assigned to escort Queen Camilla to her meeting with the Archbishop of Canterbury. The meeting was supposed to discuss upcoming religious ceremonies, but Marcus suspected it might be about something far more serious. As they walked through the palace corridors, Queen Camilla seemed nervous and distracted. She kept glancing at Marcus as if she was trying to read his thoughts. Several times she started to say something, then stopped herself. "Marcus," she finally said as they approached the Archbishop's office, "you've been very quiet lately. Is everything all right?" "Yes, Your Majesty," he replied, trying to keep his voice steady. "Just focused on my duties." She studied his face again with that same intense look he had seen 3 days earlier. "Good," she said slowly. "Focus is important. Sometimes people hear things they shouldn't hear, and it can be very distracting." The way she said it made Marcus's blood run cold. She knew. Somehow she knew that he had overheard the phone call. But how much did she know? And more importantly, what was she planning to do about it? The meeting with the Archbishop lasted 2 hours. Marcus stood outside the door as usual, but this time he made sure not to listen. He had learned his lesson about accidentally overhearing conversations that could change his life forever. When the meeting ended, the Archbishop emerged, looking troubled and confused. He nodded to Marcus but didn't make eye contact, which was unusual for the normally friendly religious leader. Queen Camilla came out a few minutes later, looking somewhat relieved but still anxious. As they walked back toward her private quarters, she suddenly stopped in an empty corridor. "Marcus, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me." His heart started pounding. This was it, the moment he had been dreading for 3 days. "Of course, Your Majesty. 3 days ago, when you were standing outside my study, did you hear my phone conversation?" Marcus felt the weight of the moment. He could lie, deny everything, and hope that she believed him. Or he could tell the truth and face whatever consequences came with it. He looked into her eyes and saw not anger, but desperation and fear. "Yes, Your Majesty," he said quietly. "I heard parts of it." Queen Camilla closed her eyes and took a deep breath. When she opened them again, they were filled with tears. "How much did you hear?" "Enough," Marcus replied honestly. She leaned against the wall, suddenly looking much older than her years. "I've been going crazy for 3 days, wondering if you knew. I could see it in your face, in the way you looked at me. You know, don't you? You know about the DNA results?" "Yes, Your Majesty." "And what are you planning to do with that knowledge?" Marcus had been asking himself the same question for 3 days. "I don't know," he admitted. "I've served the royal family my entire adult life. I've dedicated everything to protecting the monarchy. But now you've discovered that everything you believed in is a lie." She finished for him. They stood in silence for a moment, both lost in their own thoughts. Finally, Queen Camilla spoke again. "Marcus, I need you to understand something. This secret isn't just about me or even about the current royal family. It's about the entire foundation of British society. The monarchy isn't just a family. It's an institution that provides stability, tradition, and identity to millions of people around the world. But it's built on a lie, Marcus said. Yes, she admitted. It's built on a lie, but sometimes lies become more important than truth. Sometimes lies hold civilization together. Marcus struggled to process what she was saying. So you want me to stay quiet? To pretend I never heard anything? I want you to think about what would happen if this information became public, she said. The monarchy would collapse overnight. The government would fall into chaos. Other countries would lose respect for Britain. The economy would suffer. Millions of people who find comfort and pride in the royal tradition would be devastated. But people deserve to know the truth. Do they? Queen Camilla asked. What good would it do? Would it make anyone's life better? Would it solve any problems? Or would it just destroy something beautiful and important? For no reason other than satisfying curiosity. Marcus had never thought about it that way. He had always believed that truth was more important than comfort, but now he was beginning to question that belief. What about Dr. Richardson? He asked. What happened to her? Queen Camilla's expression darkened. Dr. Richardson has agreed to destroy all the evidence and never speak of this again. She's been compensated very generously for her cooperation. And if she changes her mind, she won't, the Queen said with cold certainty. The way she said it made Marcus uncomfortable. He began to wonder exactly what kind of compensation Dr. Richardson had received, and whether it had been entirely voluntary. Your Majesty, Marcus said carefully, I need some time to think about all this. Of course, she replied. But Marcus, I hope you'll consider not just what's right, but what's best for everyone involved, including yourself. Again, there was something in her tone that sounded like a threat. Marcus realized that his life had just become very complicated and very dangerous. That evening, Marcus sat in his small apartment staring at the wall and trying to figure out what to do. He had always been a simple man with simple beliefs. Right was right, wrong was wrong, and truth was always better than lies. But now he was facing a situation where those simple beliefs didn't provide clear answers. He thought about his oath as a royal guard, his duty to protect the monarchy. But what did that mean when the monarchy itself was based on deception? Was he supposed to protect the truth, or protect the lie that had become more important than the truth? He also couldn't stop thinking about Queen Camilla's veiled threats. She had made it clear that Dr. Richardson had been convinced to stay quiet, and that Marcus would be wise to do the same. He began to wonder what would happen to him if he decided to speak out. As he sat in the darkness, Marcus realized that he had accidentally become one of the most dangerous people in Britain. He possessed information that could bring down the government, destroy centuries of tradition, and change the course of history. The question was, what was he going to do with that power? The next morning would bring new challenges, new pressures, and new dangers. Marcus knew that his life would never be the same again. He had crossed a line from which there was no return, and now he had to decide which side of history he wanted to be on. The next morning brought an unexpected visitor to Marcus's apartment. He was having his coffee when there was a sharp knock at his door. When he opened it, he found himself face to face with Sir Geoffrey Hartwell, the head of royal security. This man had never visited Marcus's home before, and his presence here could only mean one thing. May I come in, Marcus? Sir Geoffrey asked, though it wasn't really a question. Of course, sir. Sir Geoffrey entered the small apartment and looked around with the practiced eye of a security expert. He was a tall, thin man with gray hair and cold blue eyes that seemed to see everything. Marcus had always respected him, but had never particularly liked him. Please sit down, Sir Geoffrey said, making himself at home in Marcus's own apartment. We need to have a conversation. Marcus sat across from him, his heart already racing. This was clearly about the DNA secret. I understand you had an interesting conversation with Her Majesty yesterday, Sir Geoffrey began. Yes, sir. And I understand that you accidentally overheard some sensitive information a few days ago. Yes, sir. Sir Geoffrey leaned forward slightly. Marcus, you've been a loyal guard for 15 years. You have an excellent record, no disciplinary issues, and you're well respected by your colleagues. That's why I'm here to have this conversation personally, rather than sending someone else to handle the situation. The way he said handle the situation made Marcus's skin crawl. What kind of situation, sir? The situation where a royal guard possesses information that could destroy the monarchy and everything we've all sworn to protect. Sir Geoffrey's voice remained calm and professional, but there was steel underneath it. I've never spoken about what I heard to anyone, Marcus said. I know, and we appreciate that, but we need to discuss your future and how we can ensure that your continued silence is guaranteed. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. What do you mean by guaranteed? Sir Geoffrey reached into his jacket and pulled out a thick envelope. Inside this envelope, you'll find a transfer order to our security division in Australia. It's a promotion, actually. You'll be head of security for our diplomatic missions in the Pacific region. The salary is 3 times what you're making now. You'll have a beautiful house provided, and you'll be far away from any temptation to discuss what you overheard. Marcus stared at the envelope. And if I don't want to transfer to Australia? Then we'll have to explore other options. Sir Geoffrey's tone remained pleasant, but his meaning was clear. What other options? Well, there's early retirement with a full pension and a nice settlement bonus. You could buy a house in the countryside, take up gardening, live quietly, very quietly. And if I don't want early retirement either? Sir Geoffrey's smile faded slightly. Marcus, I hope you understand that what you've learned puts you in a very unique position. There are only a handful of people in the world who know this information. Dr. Richardson has already agreed to relocate to New Zealand, where she'll be conducting research on marine biology instead of genetics. Her lab technicians have found new careers in Canada and South Africa. Marcus realized that the royal family had been busy over the past few days, quietly dealing with everyone who knew their secret. What happened to them exactly? Marcus asked. Nothing bad, I assure you. They're all living comfortable lives in beautiful locations, with excellent jobs and generous compensation packages. They've simply agreed to never discuss their previous work. And if they change their minds? Sir Geoffrey's expression became cold. They won't. People in their situations tend to be very motivated to keep their agreements, Marcus understood. These people hadn't been given choices. They had been relocated against their will, probably with threats against their families if they ever spoke out. The royal family was systematically eliminating everyone who knew their secret. So my choices are Australia, retirement, or... I prefer not to discuss the third option, Sir Geoffrey said. It's unpleasant for everyone involved. They sat in silence for a moment. Marcus was beginning to understand just how serious this situation was. The royal family wasn't just asking for his silence. They were demanding it, and they were prepared to do whatever was necessary to ensure it. Can I have some time to think about it? Marcus asked. Of course, but not too much time. We need this matter resolved quickly. The charity gala is next week, and we can't have any loose ends. After Sir Geoffrey left, Marcus sat in his apartment feeling trapped. His entire life was being turned upside down because he had accidentally overheard a phone conversation. He hadn't sought out this information, hadn't wanted to know the royal family's secrets, but now he was being punished for it anyway. He thought about the 3 options he had been given. Australia sounded nice, but it would mean leaving behind his entire life, his family, his friends. Early retirement might be pleasant, but he was only 42 years old. He wasn't ready to spend the rest of his life hiding in some cottage in the countryside. And the third option, he tried not to think about what that might involve. That afternoon, Marcus did something he had never done in 15 years of service. He called in sick. He needed time to think, and he couldn't do that while standing guard at the palace, surrounded by the people who were threatening him. He went for a long walk in Hyde Park, trying to clear his head. The park was full of families enjoying the autumn weather, children playing, couples walking hand in hand. These were the people who would be affected if the truth about the royal family came out. Their lives would be turned upside down, their beliefs shattered, their sense of national identity destroyed. But was protecting them worth covering up the truth? And was covering up the truth worth ruining his own life? As he walked, Marcus began to realize that he had more options than Sir Geoffrey had offered. He didn't have to choose between exile, retirement, and death. There was a 4th option that no one had mentioned. He could go public with the information. The thought terrified him, but it also excited him. He could tell the world the truth about the royal family. He could expose the lies and deception. He could make sure that history was honest even if it was painful, but he would have to be very careful. The royal family had already shown that they were willing to relocate or eliminate anyone who threatened their secret. If they discovered that Marcus was planning to go public, they would stop him before he had a chance to speak. He would need evidence, documentation, proof that couldn't be dismissed or denied. And he would need a way to get the information out safely, without putting himself in immediate danger. As evening approached, Marcus made his decision. He wasn't going to Australia, and he wasn't going into early retirement. He was going to expose the truth no matter what the consequences might be. But first he needed to gather evidence, and he knew exactly where to start. Marcus returned to work the next day with a plan. He would act normal, pretend to consider Sir Geoffrey's offers while secretly gathering evidence of the royal family's deception. He knew it was dangerous, but he couldn't live with himself if he stayed silent about such a massive lie. His first opportunity came during Queen Camilla's morning meeting with her private secretary, Lady Morrison. Marcus was stationed outside the door when he heard them discussing damage control measures. "Have we heard back from the contacts in New Zealand about Dr. Richardson?" Queen Camilla asked. "Yes, Your Majesty." She settled in nicely. The marine biology position at Wellington University seems to suit her. She's signed all the necessary agreements and understands the consequences of breaking them. And the lab technicians? Both relocated successfully. Mr. Peterson is working for a pharmaceutical company in Toronto, and Ms. Chen has joined a research facility in Cape Town. Neither will be working with DNA analysis again. Marcus listened carefully, taking mental notes. The royal family had systematically removed every person involved in the DNA testing. This wasn't just about keeping a secret. This was about covering up evidence of fraud on a massive scale. "What about the guard?" Queen Camilla asked, and Marcus's blood ran cold. "Sir Geoffrey is handling that situation. He's given the guard 3 options, and we expect a decision within the next few days. I hope he chooses wisely," the Queen said. "I would hate for things to become unpleasant." The way she said it confirmed Marcus's worst fears. If he didn't accept one of the first 2 options, the third option would involve his disappearance, just like the others who had been relocated. After the meeting ended, Marcus followed Lady Morrison as she walked to her office. She was carrying a briefcase that she clutched tightly to her chest. Marcus suspected it contained documents related to the DNA cover-up. Later that day, Marcus volunteered for overtime duty, claiming he needed the extra money. This gave him access to parts of the palace that were usually empty in the evening. He made his way to Lady Morrison's office, knowing she had left for the day. The office was locked, but Marcus had learned lock-picking skills during his security training. Within minutes, he was inside, searching through files and documents. What he found was worse than he had imagined. There were detailed files on everyone who had been relocated. Dr. Richardson hadn't voluntarily moved to New Zealand. She had been given a choice between a comfortable exile or having her career destroyed through false accusations of research fraud. The lab technicians had faced similar threats, but most shocking of all was a folder labeled Historical Precedents. Inside were documents showing that this wasn't the first time the royal family had covered up DNA evidence. There had been similar incidents in the 1960s, 1980s, and 1990s. Each time, scientists who discovered genetic inconsistencies in the royal bloodline had been silenced through bribes, threats, or worse. One document from 1987 described how a genealogist who had questioned the royal family's ancestry had died in a car accident just days before he was supposed to publish his findings. Another from 1994 mentioned a historian who had discovered evidence of illegitimate births in the royal line. He had suffered a heart attack at the young age of 35. Just after meeting with palace officials, Marcus photographed as many documents as possible with his phone, his hands shaking as he realized the full extent of what he had uncovered. This wasn't just about current DNA tests. The royal family had been covering up the truth about their bloodline for decades, and they had been willing to hurt people to keep their secret. As he was photographing the last document, Marcus heard footsteps in the corridor outside. Someone was coming. He quickly put the files back in place, turned off his phone's camera, and hid behind a large filing cabinet. The door opened, and Sir Geoffrey entered with another man Marcus didn't recognize. The stranger was tall and muscular, with the bearing of a military professional. He had the look of someone who solved problems with violence rather than words. "The situation is becoming complicated," Sir Geoffrey said as they entered the office. "The guard is taking too long to make his decision. Want me to help speed up his decision-making process?" The stranger asked with a slight accent that Marcus couldn't identify. "Not yet, but soon perhaps. Her Majesty is becoming impatient." They spoke for a few more minutes about logistics and timing, but Marcus couldn't hear all the details from his hiding place. What he did hear was enough to understand that his time was running out. The royal family was losing patience with his hesitation, and they were preparing to take more direct action. After they left, Marcus waited another hour before sneaking out of the office. He went straight home, his mind racing with everything he had discovered. The evidence he had gathered was explosive, but he needed to be smart about how he used it. He couldn't go to the British press. They would either bury the story to protect the monarchy, or the royal family would stop him before it could be published. He needed to find an international outlet, someone who wouldn't be influenced by British pressure. Marcus spent the rest of the night researching investigative journalists who had a history of exposing powerful people and institutions. He found several possibilities in the United States, Germany, and France, but he also knew that the royal family had international connections and influence. He would have to be very careful about who he trusted. The next morning, Marcus made contact with James Mitchell, an American investigative journalist who worked for a major newspaper in New York. Mitchell had a reputation for fearlessness and had exposed corruption in several world governments. If anyone would be willing to publish this story, it would be him. Marcus sent Mitchell an encrypted email with just enough information to get his attention. "I have evidence that the British royal family has been covering up DNA fraud for decades. People have died to keep this secret. Are you interested?" Mitchell's response came within an hour. "Very interested. Can you provide proof?" Marcus replied, "I have documents, photographs, and recordings, but I need guarantees about my safety. The people involved have killed to protect this secret. Meet me in Paris next week. I'll bring a team of security experts and legal advisors. If your evidence is real, we'll make sure the world knows about it." Marcus stared at the email for a long time. This was his chance to expose the truth, but it was also incredibly dangerous. Once he met with Mitchell, there would be no going back. The royal family would know he had betrayed them, and they would stop at nothing to prevent the story from being published. But he thought about Dr. Richardson, forced into exile in New Zealand. He thought about the lab technicians relocated against their will. He thought about the genealogist who had died in a suspicious car accident, and the historian who had suffered a convenient heart attack. Most of all, he thought about the millions of people around the world who believed in the monarchy, who had no idea that their faith was based on centuries of lies and cover-ups. Marcus made his decision. He would go to Paris, meet with James Mitchell, and tell the world the truth about the British royal family. Whatever happened to him after that, at least he would know he had done the right thing. But first he had to survive the next few days without arousing suspicion, and that was going to be the hardest part of all. The next few days were the most stressful of Marcus's life. He had to act completely normal while knowing that he was planning to betray everything he had sworn to protect. Every conversation with Queen Camilla felt like walking on thin ice. Every glance from Sir Geoffrey seemed to carry hidden threats. On Wednesday, Sir Geoffrey approached him during his lunch break. "Marcus, have you given any thought to our conversation the other day?" "Yes, sir." "I'm still considering my options." "Well, don't consider too long. Her Majesty would like this matter resolved by Friday. 2 days. Marcus felt his stomach tighten. His meeting with James Mitchell wasn't scheduled until the following Tuesday. He needed to buy more time without raising suspicion. "I'm leaning toward the Australia position," Marcus lied. "But I'd like to visit first, see what it's like. Make sure it's a good fit." Sir Geoffrey studied his face carefully. "That seems reasonable. We could arrange a brief visit next month after the charity gala. Actually, I was hoping to go this weekend. I have a friend in Sydney who could show me around, help me get a feel for the place." This was another lie. Marcus didn't have any friends in Sydney, but he needed a reason to leave the country that wouldn't seem suspicious. Sir Geoffrey considered this for a moment. "This weekend seems rather sudden." "I know, but I've been thinking about this constantly. I can't make a good decision without seeing the place myself. If I like it, I'll accept the transfer immediately." After a long pause, Sir Geoffrey nodded. "Very well. We can arrange travel documents for you. But Marcus, I trust you understand that this is a business trip only. You're not to discuss your current position or any sensitive matters with anyone while you're there. Of course not, sir. That evening, Marcus booked a flight to Paris instead of Sydney. He used a credit card he had hidden away for emergencies, one that wasn't connected to his royal security clearance. He also bought a cheap phone that couldn't be traced back to him. Friday morning arrived with unexpected complications. Marcus was assigned to accompany Queen Camilla to a private meeting with Prince William and Prince Harry. As they walked through the palace corridors, the Queen seemed more nervous than usual. "Marcus," she said suddenly, "Sir Geoffrey tells me you're planning to visit Australia this weekend." "Yes, Your Majesty. I want to make sure it's the right choice." She stopped walking and turned to face him. "And if it's not the right choice? What then?" Marcus met her gaze steadily. "Then I suppose I'll have to consider early retirement." "I hope you will," she said quietly. "I truly hope you will." The meeting with the princes was held in a small private conference room. Marcus stood guard outside, but the walls were thick and he couldn't hear much of the conversation. What he could hear was enough to understand that they were discussing the DNA situation and how to prevent any leaks. At one point, Prince William's voice rose slightly. "Are you absolutely certain that all the evidence has been destroyed?" Queen Camilla's response was muffled, but Marcus heard the word almost clearly. Prince Harry spoke next. "What about the guard? Can he be trusted?" "We're handling that situation," came the Queen's reply. Marcus realized that his fate was being decided in that room. The royal family was discussing him like he was a problem to be solved, rather than a person who had served them faithfully for 15 years. After the meeting ended, Marcus helped escort Queen Camilla back to her quarters. As they walked, she seemed to be working up the courage to say something. "Marcus," she finally said, "I want you to know that I've always appreciated your service. You've been loyal and dependable, and that means a great deal to me." The way she said it sounded like a goodbye. Her threat, "Thank you, Your Majesty. I hope your trip to Australia goes well, and I hope you find what you're looking for there." Again, there was something in her tone that suggested she knew more than she was saying. That evening, Marcus packed a small bag with essential items and the evidence he had gathered. He had printed copies of all the photographs he had taken, and he had written down everything he remembered from the conversations he had overheard. He also included a detailed account of how the royal family had threatened him and the others who knew their secret. As he prepared to leave for the airport, Marcus felt a strange mixture of fear and excitement. He was about to expose one of the biggest conspiracies in modern history, but he was also about to make himself a target of one of the most powerful families in the world. The flight to Paris was uneventful, but Marcus spent the entire journey looking over his shoulder. He had told his colleagues he was going to Sydney, but he couldn't shake the feeling that somehow the royal family knew where he was really going. He arrived in Paris on Saturday morning and checked into a small hotel in the Marais district. James Mitchell had arranged to meet him at a cafe near the Louvre on Sunday afternoon. Marcus spent Saturday exploring the city, trying to stay calm and act like a tourist. Sunday morning brought disturbing news. Marcus was reading international news on his phone when he saw a headline that made his blood run cold. "British scientist dies in New Zealand diving accident." The article was brief, but it identified the victim as Dr. Helena Richardson, a geneticist who had recently moved to Wellington to study marine biology. According to the report, she had been diving alone and had apparently gotten tangled in underwater vegetation. Her body had been found by other divers the next day. Marcus stared at the article, his hands shaking. This couldn't be a coincidence. Dr. Richardson had been eliminated because she knew too much about the royal family's DNA secret. The royal family had decided that relocation wasn't enough. They wanted her permanently silenced. He immediately thought about the lab technicians who had been relocated to Canada and South Africa. Were they safe, or were they next on the royal family's list? Marcus realized that his own situation had become even more dangerous. The royal family wasn't just relocating people anymore. They were killing them. Marcus called James Mitchell using his untraceable phone. "Mitchell here. It's Marcus. We need to meet earlier than planned. Something terrible has happened." "What's wrong?" "The scientist I told you about, the one who discovered the DNA evidence. She's dead. They killed her and made it look like an accident." There was a long pause. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure. and I think I might be next. We need to meet today, not tomorrow. All right. Can you get to the Musée d'Orsay in an hour? I'll be waiting by the Impressionist paintings on the 5th floor. Look for a man in a blue jacket reading a guidebook. I'll be there. Marcus left his hotel immediately, taking a roundabout route to make sure he wasn't being followed. Paris suddenly felt less safe than it had the day before. Every person on the street seemed like a potential threat. Every car that passed might contain someone sent by the royal family to silence him permanently. At the Musée d'Orsay, Marcus found James Mitchell exactly where he said he would be, standing in front of a Monet painting and pretending to read about it. Mitchell was a thin man in his 50s with graying hair and intelligent eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. "Marcus?" Mitchell asked quietly. "Yes. Let's walk. These places have too many security cameras." They left the museum and walked along the Seine River, speaking in low voices as they moved. "Tell me everything," Mitchell said. Marcus gave him a complete account of what he had overheard and discovered. He showed Mitchell the photographs he had taken of the documents, explained about the DNA test results, and described how the royal family had systematically eliminated everyone who knew their secret. Mitchell listened without interruption, occasionally asking for clarification or additional details. When Marcus finished, the journalist was quiet for a long time. "This is incredible," Mitchell finally said. "If this is true, it's the biggest story of the century." "It's true. I have the evidence. The problem is the evidence you have is mostly circumstantial. The photographs of documents are helpful, but they could be dismissed as forgeries. The conversations you overheard could be denied. We need something more concrete." "Like what?" "Ideally, we'd need the actual DNA test results or recordings of the conversations, or testimony from Dr. Richardson herself." "But since she's dead," Mitchell trailed off thinking, "there might be another way." "You said there were historical precedents, other cover-ups going back decades?" "Yes, I found files on several incidents. If we can prove a pattern of behavior, show that this has been going on for years, it would make your current allegations more credible. We need to find evidence of the older cover-ups. How do we do that?" "Research. Investigation. We need to track down family members of the people who were silenced in the past. Look for witnesses who might still be alive. Dig through archives and records." Marcus felt overwhelmed. "That could take months." "It might. But Marcus, you need to understand something. The royal family has lawyers, public relations experts, and government connections. If we publish this story based only on the evidence you have now, they'll destroy it within hours. They'll say you're a disgruntled employee making up lies for attention. They'll produce experts who will claim your photographs are fake. They'll make you look like a conspiracy theorist. So what do I do in the meantime? They expect me back in London tomorrow. If I don't show up, they'll know I've betrayed them." Mitchell thought about this. "You need to buy us time. Go back to London, act normal." Marcus's flight back to London felt like the longest journey of his life. Every minute brought him closer to a confrontation that could determine whether he lived or died. He had rehearsed his story dozens of times, but he still wasn't sure he could convince Queen Camilla and Sir Geoffrey that his trip to Australia had gone well. He arrived at Heathrow on Monday evening and went straight home. His phone had 17 missed calls from Sir Geoffrey and 3 text messages asking him to call immediately upon his return. Marcus waited until Tuesday morning to respond, claiming he had been exhausted from the long flight and had slept for 14 hours straight. "Marcus, we need to talk," Sir Geoffrey said when he finally called back. "Come to my office immediately." The walk to Sir Geoffrey's office felt like a march to his execution. Marcus tried to appear calm and rested, like someone who had just returned from a pleasant vacation to Australia, but inside his heart was pounding with fear. Sir Geoffrey was waiting for him with 2 other men Marcus didn't recognize. One was the same muscular stranger he had seen in Lady Morrison's office. The other was a thin, pale man with cold eyes who looked like an accountant, but radiated danger. "Please sit down, Marcus," Sir Geoffrey said politely. "How was your trip?" "Wonderful," Marcus replied, forcing enthusiasm into his voice. "Sydney is a beautiful city. The weather was perfect, and I think I'd really enjoy living there." "I'm glad to hear that. And you're ready to accept the transfer?" "Absolutely. When can we make it official?" Sir Geoffrey smiled, but his eyes remained cold. "There's just one small problem, Marcus. We contacted the Australian Immigration Office to begin processing your work visa, and they have no record of you entering the country this weekend." Marcus felt the blood drain from his face. He had been caught in his lie, and now he was sitting in a room with 3 men who were probably prepared to kill him. I don't understand, he stammered, trying to buy time to think. Neither do we, said the thin, pale man, which is why we'd like to know where you really went this weekend. Marcus realized he had only one chance. He had to tell them a partial truth and hope they believed it. I went to Ireland, he said quietly. I have family there, people I hadn't seen in years. I wanted to visit them before making such a big decision about moving to Australia. Why lie about it? Sir Geoffrey asked, because I was embarrassed. I told you I had a friend in Sydney, but that wasn't true. I just needed time to think, and visiting my family seemed like the right thing to do. The 3 men exchanged glances. Marcus couldn't tell whether they believed him or not. Which family members did you visit? The pale man asked. Marcus thought quickly. He did have distant relatives in Ireland, people he hadn't spoken to in years. My cousin Patrick in Dublin and my Aunt Mary in Cork. We'll need their contact information so we can verify your story. Of course. Marcus provided the information, hoping his relatives would back up his story if contacted. Sir Geoffrey leaned forward. Marcus, I hope you understand how serious this situation is. We can't afford any deceptions or half-truths. Too much is at stake. I understand, sir. I'm sorry I lied about where I went. It won't happen again. Good. Because lies have consequences. Dr. Richardson recently discovered that lies can be very dangerous indeed. The way he said it confirmed what Marcus had already suspected. Dr. Richardson's death hadn't been an accident. What happened to Dr. Richardson? Marcus asked, trying to sound innocent. Diving accident in New Zealand, the muscular man said with a slight smile. Very tragic. She was alone. No one around to help her when she got into trouble. The message was clear. This could happen to Marcus too if he didn't cooperate. That's terrible, Marcus said. She seemed like a nice woman. She was, Sir Geoffrey agreed. But she made some poor choices near the end. We hope you won't make similar mistakes. The meeting continued for another hour, with the 3 men asking detailed questions about Marcus's weekend and his plans for the future. Marcus stuck to his story about visiting family in Ireland, and gradually the atmosphere in the room began to relax. Finally, Sir Geoffrey dismissed the other 2 men and spoke to Marcus privately. I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt, he said. Your story about Ireland is believable, and your relatives confirm that you visited them. But Marcus, this is your last chance. Any more deceptions, any more lies, and there won't be another conversation like this one. I understand, sir. Good. Now about the Australia position. We need a decision today. Marcus took a deep breath. I accept the transfer. When do I leave? 3 weeks. That will give us time to process the paperwork and make arrangements. Until then, you'll continue your regular duties, but you'll also work with our transition team to prepare for your new role. Marcus nodded, trying to look pleased about his new assignment. Inside, he was calculating how much time this gave James Mitchell to build their case. 3 weeks might be enough if the journalist worked quickly. Over the next several days, Marcus fell into a routine of pretending to be excited about his upcoming move to Australia, while secretly hoping that Mitchell was making progress with the investigation. He participated in meetings about his new role, filled out paperwork for his work visa, and even looked at photographs of the house he would supposedly be living in. But he also noticed that his every move was being watched more carefully than before. There was always a security officer nearby, always someone keeping track of where he went and who he spoke to. The royal family clearly didn't trust him completely, despite his apparent cooperation. On Thursday of his 2nd week back, Marcus received an encrypted message from Mitchell on his secret phone. The message was brief but encouraging. Making progress. Found 2 witnesses from the 1987 incident. Need 2 more weeks. Marcus deleted the message immediately, but it gave him hope. Mitchell was building the case they needed to expose the royal family's deception. That same day, Queen Camilla requested a private meeting with Marcus. When he entered her study, she was sitting behind her desk, looking older and more tired than he had ever seen her. Marcus, please sit down. He sat across from her, trying to read her expression. I understand you've accepted the position in Australia. Yes, Your Majesty. I'm looking forward to the opportunity. She studied his face for a long moment. Are you, really? Or are you just telling me what you think I want to hear? Marcus felt his heart start racing again. I'm genuinely excited about the position, Your Majesty. I hope so. Because, Marcus, I want you to understand something. This transfer isn't just about giving you a new job. It's about protecting something much larger than any of us individually. I understand. Do you? Do you really understand what would happen if the information you accidentally overheard were to become public? Marcus nodded, not trusting his voice. The monarchy would collapse. The government would fall. The entire British way of life would be destroyed. Millions of people would lose their sense of identity and purpose. Other nations would lose respect for us. The economic consequences alone would be devastating. She leaned forward, her eyes intense. But that's not the worst part, Marcus. The worst part is that all of this destruction would accomplish nothing positive. It wouldn't make anyone's life better. It wouldn't solve any problems. It would just destroy something beautiful and important for no reason other than satisfying people's curiosity about ancient history. Marcus remained silent, afraid that anything he said might betray his true intentions. I'm not asking you to lie, Marcus. I'm asking you to consider whether some truths are worth the destruction they would cause. I'm asking you to think about the greater good. I have thought about it, Your Majesty. And what have you concluded? Marcus looked into her eyes and made his final gamble. I've concluded that my loyalty is to you and to the crown. Whatever I may have heard, whatever I may know, it dies with me. Queen Camilla smiled for the first time in weeks. Thank you, Marcus. That means more to me than you can possibly know. As Marcus left her study, he felt like he had just sold his soul, but he had also bought himself the time that Mitchell needed to complete his investigation. In less than a week, Marcus would be on a plane to Australia, but hopefully by then, the truth would already be public, and the royal family's centuries of deception would finally be exposed to the world. The countdown had begun. Soon everyone would know the truth about the royal family's greatest secret.